Hello folks, my name is Mark, this is Why I Hate the World, how you guys doing? So for the past couple of months, there's been a story in the news about an NFL player named Colin Kaepernick, who has been famously taking the knee during the Pledge of Allegiance for in front of football games and such. And, conservatives have lost their minds over that whole thing, We heard a lot of commentary from different conservative talking heads, most notably Tommy Lauren, who seemed to just go completely bananas at this guy. As it turns out, he's now a free agent. He hasn't been signed up for any team now. So he's actually not affiliated with a team currently. And, the controversy seemed to be dying down. And then Donald Trump went and opened his big mouth at a rally because he needs to, kind of shore up his base a little because he's a fucking moron and his, his approval rating is in the toilet. So in an attempt to get his base back on his side, he made some comments to the effect that football players who don't stand during the Pledge of Allegiance should be fired, and he said something like, wouldn't it be great if, if they didn't stand up, then the owner would go to that son of a bitch and say, you're fired, or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. This, of course, took what was a dying controversy and threw it into overdrive, as over the weekend, athletes from all across the NFL started taking the knee, right, and not standing during the Pledge of Allegiance, or not even coming out of the locker room. Not just the NFL, we saw it also in baseball, in basketball, and not just black athletes, white athletes too, because the whole thing with Colin Kaepernick, it was in support of BLM, that he started doing this. And now it's just kind of morphed into this sort of free speech kind of thing, and has blown up in Donald Trump's face because he's an idiot. You got to remember that they didn't used to play the national anthem in front of football games, and they just started doing that right around 2009 or 2010 or so, right around then, because the Department of Defense started paying them to do that, okay, because they wanted to drum up patriotism because their recruitment numbers in the armed forces were down. And this is one of the outreach things they did, was to start paying football players to play the national anthem in front of their shows. So before anybody complains about, the NFL playing politics, just please remember, politics approach the NFL first, okay? So that's what, I don't even see why we have to play it before a football game in the first place. Okay, that's, anyhow. Secondly, these are the same people who are complaining about, these athletes protesting peacefully. They're the same people that go, that scream at Black Lives Matter when they go out and protest peacefully, and then those protests don't always turn out to be so peaceful, You get the Black Bloc and the Antifa people that usually go around and take advantage of those protests to, fuck shit up and destroy things, right? And that's, that's been a criticism of BLM, that they allow that to happen. So here's an example of people who are protesting peacefully, right? Not smashing windows, not torching police cars, not punching Nazis, none of that shit. Just sitting there, peacefully protesting, just kneeling, and the conservatives are losing their fucking minds. It's like, well, what do you fucking want? Do you want them to you want peaceful protest, or... because when somebody actually does it, you go crazy. And I think the main thing that this shows to everybody, what it says to me at least, is that to the right wing, to the conservatives in this country, they think the country belongs to them. They think that they're the real Americans. You hear this a lot when people like Sarah Palin do speeches and they go, this is, we're coming to the heartland, the real America, and that everybody that's on the coasts who lives in a big city is just some kind of evil liberal commie, homo butt sex having fucking Democrat, you know, Satanist and shit. And we just want to like destroy America, right? You know, through our fucking socialized medicine and you know, freedom of speech and shit. And it's like, that's what it just seems to me. You know, it's like they're appealing to their base to drum up yet another fucking bullshit reason, you know, to separate and anger them so that they'll go out and vote Republican. That's what it is, you know. And it's like this sort of, you know, it's the same thing, like the same fucking people who complain when people get mad that they're walking around with a Confederate flag. And then they cry of freedom of speech, you know, I have the freedom to hold this flag, and I have the freedom to, like, you know, be racist and to, like, think, you know, certain things, you know. And then they complain about that, but when people actually on the other side of the political aisle exercise their free speech through a peaceful protest, suddenly it's like the biggest fucking evil ever. And they're like all triggered, you know, and it's basically, it tells me, all right, first off, that they only think rights apply to them. They only think, you know, they only believe in freedom of speech when it applies to them. When it's their freedom to, like, you know, have Milo Yiannopoulos go up on a college campus, right, where it's like, and insult fucking liberals. Okay, it's only that, you know, that's their freedom of speech when they can walk around with, like, you know, Nazi flags and Confederate flags and, like, you know, point shotguns at people, right? You know, it's their freedom when they're, you know, when they have their freedom to carry their fucking loaded gun in public, you know, and to, like, say vile things. That's basically all it is. It comes down to, like, freedom of speech. They only believe in it when it's theirs, and when it's everybody else's, they don't believe in it, you know. And that's like, that's the other thing, right? It just really kind of just rubs it in. It rubs it in that, to, you know, to them, people like me, we're not, like, deserving of any of the constitutional protections. You know, we're not deserving of the right to free speech. We're not deserving of, you know, the right to free expression or any shit like that, you know. And because to them, I'm not a real American, you know, because of, I live in the wrong fucking place apparently, and I believe the wrong things, you know. Like you see, even Trump said that during his speech, you know. They're insulting our culture, you know. It's our culture. Like, the Confederate flags are our culture. The Confederate statues, this is our culture. It's like, you know, no, it's not, all right? It's my culture too, okay? I'm an American just as the same as any of those motherfuckers are, right? I'm an American just the same way that some guy in Alabama walking around with a Confederate flag and fucking, like, you know, kowtowing to a statue of Robert E. Lee is, right? It's also my culture, okay? And it's you know, there is no separation, you know. It's not like, oh, this doesn't belong to you, you know, that's bullshit, okay? It belongs to all of us, right? And we have the right to express ourselves, you know, and reflect upon that culture in any fucking way we want, okay? Because that's what the Constitution says. One more point before we go. A lot of people out there are comparing this to Kim Davis, who is the, if you guys remember last year, she was the county clerk in Kentucky who refused to issue marriage licenses to gay people. And, you know, and I could see kind of how somebody would say that at first, you know. Apparently, you know, because she was someone who protested on the job, and she got arrested for it, and, you know, that kind of thing. But it's a little bit different, you know. It's actually, it's a lot different when you think about it than what's going on with the NFL, because first off, Kim Davis was in violation of the law when she did her personal protest there. You know, the government, right, doesn't, when you work for the government, you don't have the freedom to discriminate. You know, you don't have that. The law says that you have to give equal protection to everybody, you know. And her not issuing gay, you know, marriage licenses to gay people, her not doing that was in violation of those people's First Amendment rights. Okay, the First Amendment protects you from the government. Kim Davis, working in an official capacity as a county clerk in Kentucky, was working as the government, you know. So it's against the law for her to not issue a marriage license based on someone's sexual orientation, right? That is 100% different than what's going on with the NFL. In the NFL, this is a private institution, right? So they're not violating anybody's rights at all. In fact, they're exercising their rights. And yes, you could say that it would be legal for them to be fired. You know, like you could make the argument that the owner of the team could fire them for that. Although he probably, you know, none of the, so far that hasn't happened. But you could say that, but they're not violating any law. You know, in fact, they're exercising their rights under the law. Kim Davis didn't have that right. As, you know, the only way that Kim Davis could actually protest, you know, her misgivings about gay marriage would be to resign. That's the only legal way that she could do it. You know, so it's like apples and oranges there, okay? We're not applying a different standard to her because she's a conservative and a Christian versus these guys because they're, you know, black athletes. It's complete bullshit, you know. So, and anyway, just to sum this all up, you know, like I was saying before, don't let them take it away. Don't let them take away, you know, your American identity, right? Because that's what America means. America means you get to say whatever the fuck you want to say. You get to do whatever you want to do within, you know, legal limits, right? You can express yourself however you want to express yourself, right? And yes, you know, you have to live with the consequences of expressing yourself like that, but no one is allowed to tell you otherwise. And that's what it all comes down to. Nobody from the government is allowed to enforce any shit on you. Not Kim Davis, not Donald Trump. It doesn't matter if he's the fucking president, right? Even the president of the United States is not allowed to tell you what you're allowed to say, right, and what you're allowed to do. So, anyway, that's all I got, folks. Adios.